Hello there, Dave here, and before we get into today's episode about Gris, I want to give a couple of shout-outs about things going on the Patreon. First of all, this month's episode of Tales from the Way Backlog is available for all patrons at the $5 level or higher, and it is about Metal Gear for the MSX. The August episode of that show will be about Kid Chameleon, so if that sounds interesting to you, you can head on over to Patreon. Also, you can look forward in the not-so-distant future to a Patreon-only episode about the Elden Ring DLC, Shadow of the Erd Tree. So, that is stuff upcoming, and all that's left to do is to give the customary thank yous to the wonderful folks who do help support the show over on Patreon. Once again, thanks to Chris Nelson, the Top 3 podcast crew, Chris Copleen, Eric Gess, Rick Firestone, Nick Ficori, Jill, Jeff, formerly Jerf, Kieran, Soccer, ZNA, Cupcake, Kyle, Christian S., Matt aka Stormageddon, JD, Doug Leaf, Jason Emery, Brian Skirsha, Randall, Jake Martin, Jenny E., Kurt Mattis, and many more. Your support is much appreciated. Everyone else can head to patreon.com/realdavejackson if that sounds interesting to you. And with all that being said, let's take a journey with Gris. Hello, everybody. My name is Dave Jackson, and you're listening to Tales from the Backlog. This is a video games review podcast where each week I'm joined by a guest to bring a game out of the backlog, play it, and discuss. My guest today is a friend of the show, host of the Unlockables, and a licensed psychologist, Eric Gess. Welcome, Eric.
Dave, thank you so much for the glowing introduction, as always. I wouldn't say I'm a licensed psychologist, but I did major in marketing when I was in college, and that has to do with the psychology of selling things to people. So maybe the next best thing if you are looking for a psychologist on the cheap.
We can say discount psychologist. Yeah, may or may not be licensed. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a licensed priest online, so I could probably get a psychology one on some website somewhere.
Go.
Yeah. So
yeah, so one of those states will sell you a license online. Yeah, probably Nevada or something like that.
Racking up the certifications.
That's right. Well, good to have you back, Eric. For longtime listeners, Eric's been a guest on the show several times in the past. Remember, we talked about Metroid Dread. We talked about Undertale. What else do we talk about? There's another one in there somewhere that Final Fantasy 16 and Stranger of Paradise. That's right.
Yes. Those were great episodes.
Yes, they were. We're getting to the point, you've been on the show so many times that I can't remember off the top of my head how many we've done. And I have a feeling we've got another great one in store for everybody today. Today, we're going to be talking about Gris, which is a cinematic platformer developed by Nomada Studio and published by Devolver Digital for contemporary platforms in 2018. And if this is your first time listening to the podcast, first of all, thank you for stopping by. Here's how spoilers work. On every episode of the show, we're going to divide this into a non-spoiler and then a spoiler discussion. So if you want to know when the spoilers begin, you can look down in the show notes. There will be a timestamp for when the spoilers start for this episode. And until that point, we're not going to spoil the story beats, specific things that happen in the story, and some of those key realizations that you will come across as you play through Gris. So, with that being said, what is Gris? We have prepared some elevator pitches to tell you about it. I say this is a journey through sorrow in an example of not just games as art, but games in art. Eric, what would you say?
I had an emotional journey emphasized in every aspect through gameplay, art direction, and music. And then a little throwback to just an inside joke in my Discord server. This is art.
This is art. Is this art? Definitively yes. Yeah. I played this on Switch. I played it 2 times, actually. I beat it, and it was quick. It's maybe 3.5 hours to beat it. So I decided that I would try it again to see if I picked up on some details that I missed the first time, and I did. in the early levels. So I just kept going, played through it 2 times. Switch makes it needlessly difficult to know how long you've played a game, but let's say 6 hours for 2 playthroughs.
And I clocked in just about 3 hours on Steam Deck, so that checks in about 6 hours.
Right. Yep. So not a long game, and it's something I played this for a little bit before bed each night for about a week on that first playthrough. It's a nice kind of wind down, kind of wash yourself in the atmosphere and the art in the game. So we always start out the episodes by talking about our histories with Gris, what made us want to play it, what put it on our radar. And I know that when Eric, when you and we were trying to figure out a game for you to come back on the show this year, I gave you a list. You picked this off of the list. So it was on your radar somehow. So tell everybody, how did you get to that point?
Yeah, so it released, I think we have it as, 2018. And during that time, I think I kind of completely missed that this one was coming out because during that time I was in the middle of like my really gigantic, huge Monster Hunter obsession. That was like the only thing I was playing. I remember hearing about it again, mutual friends of ours, another amazing podcast and members of our community, the guys over at Lo5 Gaming. I believe they either did an episode on it or they were talking and posting a bunch about it, about how great it was. And so I remember they were doing that at the same time that you asked me to pick a game off the list to play. And so I saw that and I was like, oh, those guys, they were posting about this game a lot. And I really trust their taste. They have impeccable taste for games. And I was like, yeah, let's just do this one. Let's see what it's all about. And I'm really glad I got the opportunity to check it out. I'm really excited that I'm here with you to talk about it.
Yeah, 100%. They did cover Gris on their podcast at Lo5 Gaming. And then another one of our mutual friend podcasts, Play Along Podcast, also did an episode about Gris.
They did, yes.
Yeah. So this has been out there. People have been talking about it. And it's a game that I've just seen pop up over and over again through the years. This is one of those games that I bought on Switch like 2 years ago because it goes on sale for like $3 every couple months. And so I bought it and just, didn't play it forever for no good reason. It's not too long to play. I had no doubt that it would be good. I just didn't play it. So I threw it on my backlog resolutions list for 2024, that challenge that we're doing in my Discord server to, hit some of those games that have been sitting back there for too long. But I really knew little about the story before I bought it. I just knew that it looked pretty. That's basically all I knew about it, and that people like it. I knew that too. So to get into the quick opening thoughts here before we dive into the story, I'm kind of glad that I knew little about the story content. I knew like the main theme of the game before I started playing it. But I'm glad that I didn't know about those details and those details that we're going to save for the spoiler section here today, because this is, as you said in the elevator pitch, an emotional journey which utilizes every part of the game all integrated into this really wonderful artistic package. Like you said, the art, the music, the way the gameplay progresses, everything works in tandem to create this really wonderful experience that's over in, like we said, about 3 hours. And you get a really complete story out of it. The way that it's told leaves a lot up to your own interpretation, and they give you the key details along the way so that you know the important stuff. So I had a really good time with this. Not a good time in the sense that it was like joyous fun, like, like I'm playing, trying to think of a fun game. Like I'm playing Stranger of Paradise or something like that.
Yeah.
It is not like that. It is a great appreciation for a work of art that they made here.
Yeah, I'm pretty much in the same boat as you. I too bought it for $3 during the Steam like spring sale or something like that. So, which even if you don't get it on sale, I think it's like maybe $15 at most.
Yeah,
definitely worth that price point just to experience it. And I'm kind of in the same boat as you. I'm glad I didn't know as much as I did going into it because I can really only describe it as an experience. And just to kind of piggyback off what you said, it is open-ended enough to your interpretation to where I really think that allows it to kind of connect with each person in its own like individual way and the kind of emotions it takes you through as you play through the game. And that's really something that we don't get enough of in video games today. It's absolutely incredible. One little tidbit I did want to throw in, just because I didn't know where this would fit in the episode, and because I'm a psychopath when I do research.
Sure.
I went onto the Nomada Studios website, and I was just kind of scrolling around looking at it. And at the bottom, there is a banner for the Spanish Ministry of Culture at the bottom of their website. And I translated the little blurb that was at the bottom, and it says, "Aid for the promotion of the video game sector, podcasts, and other forms of digital creation within the framework of the Recovery, Transformation, and Resilience Plan," which is an EU plan to like invest in like member states to help their economies and stuff. And so like this game was supported by the Spanish government, by the division that like looks after like their culture and is responsible for like spreading it like throughout the world. So I just thought that was really cool, and I couldn't ever imagine America doing something similar with anything that we produce. Like, imagine the Biden administration just being like, "Yeah, we're going to culturally support like Call of Duty or something," which would be on par for us. But I don't know. I just thought that was really cool. Nice little tidbit there.
Yeah, they're supporting some parts of video games, but just keeping it on the down low so we don't hear about it in the mainstream.
Yeah, right.
No, you're right. Like, I didn't know that Spain was doing this, but I'm aware of similar things in like Canada and in Australia, where the government is supporting like these cultural products. And I think that's really cool. And again, hard to imagine, the U.S. government being like, we're going to support like your passion project, your artistic dream. They're not going to do that, but
it's something that we feel like, we've been fighting for not that we've been fighting for, but we're sitting here saying, yes, like this thing is part of like culture of the things that we produce. And I'm glad to see that some places are taking that seriously, especially in a game like this, which is absolutely incredible. And I guess you don't hear about too many games that, come out of Spain that garner wider appreciation, at least not that I've heard of. So
right. I'm only aware of like this and the company that makes the Blasphemous games. They are also from Spain. That's about all I got. So
same here.
Yeah. So we are going to take a little break, and when we come back, we're going to kind of set up the story a little bit. We're going to avoid a lot of the details that kind of make this game hit as hard as it can. We're going to be tiptoe around those. We'll save those for the spoiler section. But for now, let's enjoy some music. So in Gris, you play as a young woman. Her name is also Gris, and the game opens up with her standing on the hand of a giant stone statue. And she is singing when suddenly she chokes. Her voice catches in her throat. She grabs at her throat. She can't sing anymore. The hand crumbles away, and she is sent tumbling far below. All the colors disappear from the world, and you start the game in this completely white and black and gray area down at the bottom. At the very beginning of the game, Gris cannot really do anything at all. In fact, any button press that you make will have her fall down and take a long time to recover. Eventually, you get your bearings, you're able to move a little bit more easily, and you progress through different areas in the game akin to different experiences on this emotional journey of the narrative. And we're kind of tiptoeing around exactly what's going on, but suffice to say, it is a painful experience that Gris is working through. These are taken straight from the Steam and like eShop descriptions of Gris, so I'm okay with throwing these out there as things that are going on here. But that is the type of story that we're working with here. So just in broad strokes, Eric, did you think that this game does a good job of taking you along that journey and telling a story?
Yeah, I really think it does. Like we kind of said at the start, at least I didn't really know what to expect when starting this game up. And when that whole opening sequence kind of happens that you described, it is kind of very, like, a lot of this game you do have to like interpret the symbolism, but I think that anybody that has kind of experienced what we're going to talk about in the spoiler section will pretty much immediately kind of guess at what is going on here. And it does it too with like minimal communication. Like the only thing you're getting is like what you're seeing and hearing in the way that the game sounds and presents itself. It's not like there's no text boxes that jump up and are like, this is what's happening. This is the background, the story of the world. It really just kind of leaves you to start walking and figure out what is going on and what is the situation with why she fell and what is the problem with her and figuring out all that stuff. And it sets up a hook that I think is really compelling, that you want to keep moving forward and figure out, what is going on and discover everything that this world has to offer. Because like at the start, it's just a white void. It's a white nothingness that you're walking through. And it's really, really quite striking, which we'll talk about more in the visuals.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. That kind of minimalist storytelling, there is no dialogue in the entire game. The only words that you see are achievements that pop up throughout the game. And I kind of wish they didn't do that. I wish they would have left it with absolutely no words. So I guess if you're playing on a system that has achievements like Steam or PlayStation or something, turn those off, in my opinion, because I do think they give up a little bit too much. That said, if you don't care, if you want to be clued in on what's going on sooner rather than later, leave those on. But those are the only words.
Yeah, I was going to say, I wish I would have turned the achievements off. And if you're like one of the Platinum Trophy grinder people, you can do a second playthrough of the game and just clean up the rest of the trophies. Like I said, it's only 3 hours, so it's not a big deal if you don't get them all like the first time through. So turn those off. It's a way better experience.
Agreed. Yeah. It is a really subtle type of storytelling going on, using things like color, using things like environmental design, using things like there are some living things in the game that you come across, the way that they react to your character and things like that. And a lot of these things I only picked up on my second playthrough, things that I just took for granted as like, it's a work of art. You need background details, but I didn't have context for them until I knew the whole story. And so that second playthrough was really helpful for I got the grand narrative down the first time, no problem. I understood that. I understood the way they're working with color, all of those things. But there are a lot of very subtle details that you probably won't pick up on until you have the full narrative context and you go back and, play again. And this being such a short game, I almost feel like just assume that it's a 5 to 6 hour game and play it twice.
Yeah, I probably would have benefited from a second playthrough, but I did the watch 100% run through on YouTube while I did work. So unfortunately, I might go back and check it out again because it is so short and just see if I can pick up on some of those subtle details. But once you know what's going on and what you know what you're looking for because you understand the story and the structure of the game, then going back, it makes a lot more sense. Literally everything that you go through makes a lot more sense, where it might take you like 30 to 35 minutes to fully understand like what this game's about until you like go through like the first part and maybe, which we'll talk about in a second here, like unlock her first like little ability that she gets. And then you'll kind of realize all of that stuff ties in really well to like the symbolism of the game.
Right. Speaking of those abilities that are unlocked, this was a kind of thought that I was bouncing around in my head. And so first of all, when we say this is a narrative adventure game, I assumed that it was going to be super, super light on gameplay. And it's not, really. There is more involved gameplay here than I personally expected. So I think that they set like confines within which the story had to work. Whereas if they had went with a lesser involved gameplay style, they could have done like non-linearity basically with the game structure. And the way the game is set up, you pick where you walk, you pick where you jump, you pick where you explore and things like that. And for the first couple hours, I thought that this game might be non-linear because I just seemingly picked a random path and I made progress everywhere I went. It turns out that's not the case, but it got me thinking about this type of nonlinear structure in an emotional journey type of narrative, which I think would have been really cool. So for a while, I had to really chew on, like, did this game do itself a disservice by making it so gameplay centric, or not centric, but making the gameplay your means of progression and you have to do it in this certain order. So I don't know if you thought about this, or if this was something that you noticed when you were playing, that the gameplay being as involved as it is kind of set borders that the story couldn't really go outside of. That's part one. I'll do part two after you tell me what you thought.
Yeah, I don't think I was expecting it to be like you said. I was kind of getting ready for like this kind of narrative right along where maybe I would interact and move the character around like sometimes.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I was expecting. Certainly, I would argue that this definitely has a lot more platforming and puzzle elements than I really expected, which I was fine with, and I was actually really pleasantly surprised that it did have those elements in there. But it's interesting that they kind of put it in the linear framework that they did, because when we get to the spoiler section, the structure that the game is kind of influenced by has this linear structure to it, even though that we know now that's not necessarily the case, that's how that works. But I was doing some research again today, and I was reading about the developers and what type of game they wanted to play, and just some interviews they did about Gris. And they really wanted to focus on the accessibility aspect of it. So they wanted it to have like a gameplay element to it, but they also wanted to have it accessible enough to what they said. They didn't want people to ever get stuck in like a fail state, or have a game that had a fail state where you like had to revert to a checkpoint or you died or something like that. And that apparently caused them, a lot of challenges during the development process, because they had this narrative that they wanted to tell in place, but they also wanted to make it so that everybody could ultimately experience it. And I would say that there were a couple times where I just kind of had to look at the screen for a couple seconds and be like, okay, what is going on here? What is the game trying to tell me to do? I was confused for a few seconds, but after just like playing it and just walking and jumping around after like 2 or 3 seconds, I'd be like, oh, this is what I have to do. So I think in that aspect, they definitely succeeded in making something that's accessible for everybody. But even like you said, I didn't expect the linearity of it, because I had like a sheer moment of panic real quick when you get to like the one area that has like the apparent 4 ways you can go, like 4 different ways.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, do I have to like pick which way I go? And like the first way I picked was just the way I went. And I was like, oh, okay, then maybe I can do these in any order. But it really structures itself in a way that it pretty much forces you to progress on the path it wants you to.
Yeah, agreed. I'm glad you mentioned there are no fail states. You're right. You can't die. There's no fall damage. There is no failure. There's no combat, nothing like that. It is a smooth experience in that way. And even though the platforming is more involved than I expected something like Inside or something like that, where you literally just run and jump. And that's not this game. There's stuff that you do to puzzle solve, to platform, things like that. It's never too involved though. So like that focus on accessibility and making sure that, somebody who, as long as they knew how to use a controller, someone could pick this game up and get through it. I'm pretty confident in that. So all that be to say that I think that they deliberately set the gameplay up this way and like kind of made a box that this narrative structure had to fit inside of, because they designed the gameplay the way they did. But the fact that it is linear ended up not really affecting the journey as the narrative journey as much as I thought it could, because there are a million little touches they make that mix it up and provide some sort of unpredictability to the journey, despite the fact that when you look at like the main plot beats, like if you were to storyboard it, yeah, it's a linear journey, but there's a lot of things in between those things or inside of each of those steps along the path that mix it up. And I think it ultimately is like really well considered in that way, and really helps to make it true to life in a way that it would not have felt if they didn't make the effort to put those little things in along the way to mix it up.
Yeah, there's really like these little storytelling boxes inside the kind of grand story in each area that you go to, whether it's
Yeah.
like the different themes or the visuals that we talk about, or meeting like little critters or just kind of stuff like that. Um, yeah, and like I said, I was not disappointed when I found out that that was the case because again, I was kind of expected to be taken on a ride. So when I kind of figured out this is what it was about, I was like, oh, okay. And as a longtime avid lover of platformers, I was like, well, this is just a plus for me. I get to experience kind of this amazing indie emotional journey that I'm going on, and I get to have some of my one of my favorite game types mixed in. So and in terms of like the gameplay and stuff, it just feels pretty good to play as well.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, I think that I actually think that the developers here said that they were influenced by Journey, and you can see that in the gameplay. It does not feel any more difficult than Journey is to complete.
I think they also said they took a little bit of inspiration from Ori as well, which I could see
Yeah,
that as well.
I can see that for sure in one of the gameplay mechanics that you pick up along the way, for sure.
Yep.
So, all told, I thought that this was, once I figured out, like, yes, the grand thing is a linear path, but within that, there's a bunch of bumps and, rises and falls along the way. Once I figured that out, and then on that replay, when I started to pick up some of those really fine details that you wouldn't notice the first time because you don't know what you're looking for, or if you like you said, go back and watch a playthrough on YouTube or read about it or whatever you want to do. I ended up coming away really impressed with how much attention to detail went into this journey here, and I think that's what helps this game be as emotionally resonant as it can be. I like this game didn't move me to tears. I didn't connect with it in that way, but I see what's going on here, and I respect what is happening. And I think that for a lot of people, this is a game that will genuinely move them along the way.
I'm in the same boat. I didn't cry, but I felt a certain type of way after I was done. I was just kind of like, huh.
Yeah.
Okay. I see what's going on here. And there, most of that night I finished it, I did kind of spiral down and reflect on some life choices that I made and some stuff that I went through earlier in my life. And I was like, yeah, all right. I get it. I get what this game is trying to tell me. So,
Yeah.
If it doesn't out and out make you cry, which I saw plenty of YouTube comments, people were like, this like crushed me. And I was crying by the end of it. It is that type of game, especially if it's something you've gone through like more recently. This is definitely one that can make you feel.
Yep. 100%. It is, I think it's akin to something like Celeste, where it is specifically about a type of emotional journey, but it's not about like this one person's hyper specific journey to the point where someone who didn't go through that exact same thing would never connect with it. I think that there are a lot of life experiences that people have that would help them connect on that level with this game, the same way that Celeste has had that impact on a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
So let's put a pin in story for a while. We'll pick it back up in the spoiler section. It is time after another music break to talk about aesthetics and the wonderful visuals and music in Gris. So the most striking thing about Gris, the thing that got me to buy it in the first place, is the way that it looks. And it has this wonderful artistic style to it, this watercolor style that, like we said at the beginning of the game, starts out as this white void with, some black outlines of rocks and, dead trees and stuff like that. And then as you go, color is introduced, and the way that they use color is used for storytelling and emotion, and a way for you to identify with what's going on in the story, in addition to just making this game really, really pretty.
Yeah, I agree. I think the first thing I noticed was, like we talked about at the beginning, when you first fall down and take control of the character, you're in a stark white background, and it really is visually stunning. It's like you're looking at a watercolor painting. It really reminded me of, this is not a one-to-one comparison, but it reminded me of another game that I played a while ago and I really liked, called Child of Light from Ubisoft, and they do the same kind of like watercolor painting style of visuals to kind of invoke this like dreamlike world that you're in, and they do something similar with like the music, but that is very much like a more traditional RPG style of game and made by AAA developers, but similar kind of visual thing in practice. And then as you go along, which we will talk about later, you get as you reach certain stages, more color gets introduced into the world, and then the color kind of blends together to create this absolutely it's one of the most beautiful games that I've really ever seen. And it's incredible how they got all those visuals to do, like, again, this game doesn't tell you, there's no dialogue in this game, it doesn't tell you anything. There are like maybe 4 button prompts throughout the entire game that tell you when you get like a new ability, like what to do. And that's like all the game communicates with you. And the rest is left up to your interpretation of the way it looks, the way it sounds. And the other thing I was going to say too is I really love the way they use the camera in this game as well, because it starts off like really, really zoomed in, like super close to you, so you can see Gris and a lot of details on her. But throughout the entire adventure that you're on, or the entire journey that you're on, it really feels like it shifts to different perspectives, like so often. Like it zooms way out. And sometimes it'll be like kind of like halfway zoomed in. Sometimes it'll be zoomed like all the way in. Sometimes it'll be zoomed so far out that I couldn't even tell where my character was when I was like traversing the stage. I like lost sight of her for a moment. And it just really created this sense of scale that was really impressive. But it also seemed to like zoom way in when moments were at their most tender. And I was just like, this is incredible. Like most of the times you don't think of using a camera in this way. It's just something you need to view what's going on in your environment, but the way it's used here is so incredible.
Yep. The color, the camera, the architecture, the places that you're in, the way that they're visually designed, all of those things are used for a storytelling purpose, depending on what the focus of that part should be. And the way that all of these things, like I said at the beginning, the way that all of these visual aspects, the way the music, which we'll talk about in a second, the way your gameplay abilities, the things that you can actually see and interact with, the way they are all 100% tied in with the progression of the character and her story, that is really wonderful. It is all just really neatly tied together. It's really good. The music is composed by Berlinist, and it is, I would say, just wonderfully built to accompany the journey as well. It's not a soundtrack that I like picked out individual songs and be like, I'm going to go find that song on YouTube later. Like, this is built to mirror what's going on in the story. And again, since there are no words, and since the game is so reliant on other methods of storytelling, the music is doing a lot of lifting here too. And I think it's really excellent.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you. I was just thinking I wouldn't go and find a specific song from the soundtrack, but I might, if I was trying to just get in a headspace to like do some work or like zone out for a little bit, I might just throw on like the Gris playlist and like let it go all the way through. Like Lo-Fi Girl studying or whatever, something like that.
Right.
But it really does. It really kind of sets the mood for the entire journey. Because I did play a small portion of this. I was playing in bed one night. My wife had already gone to sleep, and I had the volume way down, and I was just like, oh, it's not really hitting the way it was the night before. And so I went back on the couch, I turned up the volume, and I was like, yeah, the music is a really, really integral part of this game. And it's really cool to see the way that the music and the visuals and the gameplay all kind of complement each other to create this package, because that's what it's using to tell you the story. Again, I don't mean to keep hammering it, but it doesn't tell you straight up what's happening. You have to use your best judgment to interpret just the way it makes you feel based on what you're hearing, what you're seeing, and what you're doing.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Yeah, music is it's incredible.
Yep. One thing I noted about the music is that it is often somber or intense. As we said, this is a journey through a painful period in Gris's life. So the music reflects that. It's somber, but there's often hopeful touches to the songs, even a lot of the sadder songs. It doesn't often sway too far in one direction of that happy, sad continuum. There's a lot of sad sounding music, and there's a lot of really hopeful, happy sounding music during certain portions of the game too. So I thought that was nice. And there is a lot of growth and dynamics in these songs too, especially when you're playing. This is a soundtrack that will be really quiet when you first enter an area. Sometimes, maybe you'll just have a few piano keys twinkling. And then when you hit one of those big moments, the soundtrack has, slowly over the course of what you've been doing, swelling up to this grand moment. The soundtrack accompanies that really well. And then when the moment's over and you need time to, or you need, I guess, mental space to process what's been going on, the soundtrack pulls back really heavily. And it's back to just that piano. So you're left with your thoughts in a lot of those cases. And so this is I had never heard of Berlinist before this, but I actually don't know about them. I don't know if it's one person or a group or anything like that, but they knocked this out of the park.
Yeah, and it really takes a lot of cues from the environment as well. It ties into kind of what's going on in the environment. I remember, and this might be a gameplay thing too, early on, when you start going through a red area and wind picks up, the music kind of picks up when the wind picks up. And it's very subtle, but it's also very cool when you notice it. Yeah,
absolutely. Berlinist, according to their website, is a band and a producer. So that is not super helpful. There's pictures of multiple people on the images here, so I'm going to go ahead and assume it's more than one person involved here.
Well, they did a great job.
Yeah, absolutely. They did great. One other thing to note, I mentioned at the beginning, in that first scene, Gris is singing. Her voice catches in her throat. She chokes and can no longer sing anymore. Vocals play a role in the, again, we're hammering it again. It plays a role in the storytelling and the journey that Gris goes on. When vocals are present, that is a storytelling device, and it's really well done. So I think that we have hit a lot of what we can and should talk about in the non-spoiler section. We already kind of wrapped up gameplay and rolled it in with the story, which is fitting for the way that this game works and how it progresses. So I think that this is as good a time as any to go ahead and jump into our final thoughts and recommendations, housekeeping, stuff like that. And then we'll get into that spoiler section, because this is a game where I feel like we've said a lot, but I don't want to say more right now. So Eric, who would you recommend play Gris? And if you have any other wrap-up thoughts, go ahead and give those now.
If you really like having an emotional connection to the games that you're playing, I would definitely check this out. I know that's not for everybody. I know some people like to escape when they play games or compete or all that kind of stuff. My show is very much about getting at the emotional core of the games that we play. And that's the type of person I would recommend play this. And it was a perfect game for everything that I believe that video games should be. Even if you're morbidly curious, it goes on sale enough to where you could probably snag it for $3, and it's certainly worth 3 hours of your time. And especially if you're in the camp of, making the case that video games are art, which they should actually be considered art. This is the perfect example of a game that I would show somebody and be like, look, this is art.
Yeah, 100%. We talk about this on a lot of episodes of the show, but the ways that games can be used as art, not just like as a game that's telling a story with themes and stuff like that, but the way that Gris in particular uses all aspects of its design, the visuals, the music, the gameplay, the light storytelling that you get, how all of those combine to tell the story when if you took one of those aspects out, it would have a harder time telling that story. Like you're missing one of the pillars, and it'd be a wobbly story in the chair metaphor that I'm constructing here. So I think that this is a good game to demonstrate as games as art and games as like a holistic artistic product. Because you can make the argument, and I do make the argument, that most of the games that I play and cover on this podcast are art.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think of one that I wouldn't consider to be that way. It would be just a waste of time to try and think of it right now. But
Stranger of Paradise?
Stranger of Paradise is art.
100% art.
That is art. The character writing for Jack is art.
It is
100%. We'll take it to your Discord server for the final say after this. But
for sure, we'll let them vote on it.
Yeah. I agree with you that this is a representative game. If anyone out there is skeptical about games as art, which I feel like, you and I and the guests that I have on this podcast and the people that are probably listening to this podcast, like anyone who listens a couple times and comes back to this show is probably on board with us here, that debate is kind of dead, in our opinion, definitively dead. But you do want shining examples, and this is a great one. And you need no more proof than the discussion that we have lined up in the spoiler section here. So I recommend this game to basically everybody. If you don't want to play a sad game, then, don't play this. It is definitively a sad game at times. But I think that a lot of people listening to this show have that in them. If you are a follower of the show, this is one in a long string of sad games that I've had on the podcast just by coincidence. So you're here, you know what's up. Go ahead and play Gris. It's cheap. It's available everywhere. Give it a shot.
Oh, I was going to say, Nomada is actually coming out with their second game, hopefully soon.
Yeah, that's right.
Called Neva. Have you seen the trailer for it? And
Neva,
do you think you'll want to play that too?
I did watch the trailer recently. It looks like another potentially very sad game, an emotional game.
I was devastated.
Yeah, so I'll definitely play it. It was not super on my radar before I played Gris, but now that I know that this is who we're dealing with as creatives, I am in.
I am, same thing. I'm 100%. I just wanted to say that so that people knew they had another game coming out.
Right, for sure. It doesn't have a release date as of right now, as the time of recording, but they say 2024. So by the time people hear this, it should be coming relatively soon. Fingers crossed, but I'm excited.
Yeah.
So before we get into spoilers, we always do a little bit of housekeeping, starting with the guest talking about the things that they make. So Eric, tell people about the Unlockables and all the wonderful stuff you've got going on over there.
Yeah, so I host the Unlockables, which I bill as the story of video games, the people who played them, and the memories made along the way. And Gris is very much a game that fits into my whole mantra about what I make that show about. Currently, I'm on an insane quest to play and chronicle all of the Kingdom Hearts games, which has been going on for probably 2 years now by the time this episode comes out. We're approaching the end, so that's very, very exciting. And then I'm kind of just releasing stuff when I can now. New kid in the mix. My son was just born a couple months ago, so still trying to navigate figuring out, being a good dad and having time to work on my passion project, which is the Unlockables. So I kind of put stuff out when I put stuff out. And if you want to check out the podcast or any of that stuff, you can go to linktr.ee/Unlockables podcast. That's where all my socials are. You can find me in Dave's Discord. I have my own Discord. You can join there where we debate if things are art in kind of like a tongue-in-cheek, humorous type of thing. Some interesting stuff gets posted in that channel, and we have to decide if it's art or not. Spoiler alert, most of it is.
Yep.
And that's a good time. And I recently dipped my feet into the YouTube game as well. I put out my first YouTube video on The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, my first ever playthrough through that. So that was an exciting, really awesome experience to experiment with a new medium. And you can go to youtube.com /the Unlockables or Unlockables or something like that. I don't remember what the URL is, but you can just see my black and white joystick kind of logo that I use as my branding there and check that out as well.
Right. Yeah. Good stuff on YouTube and on the podcast. The Kingdom Hearts journey, when I eventually do take the plunge into Kingdom Hearts, I'm so looking forward to going along that journey with you in my ears along the way. And then the other content on the Unlockables, I really enjoy your perspective on the other things that you decide to make things about. It's a valuable voice in the what can turn out to be an echo chamber in either direction. A lot of times I feel like you're bringing a nice perspective kind of removed from a lot of discourse in a lot of cases, even if you're commenting on things that are discoursified. So I value what you're putting out there, and I want everybody else to go check it out.
Dave has also been on the show multiple times. I got to interview him in one of my earliest ever episodes, and he was on one of my Christmas episodes a couple years ago. And I'm trying to figure out a way to reincorporate having people on my show if time allows it this year. So Dave will definitely be getting a call from me once I figure out kind of what that looks like.
That's right. Yep. I'm just down in the crawl space. Come find me when you need me.
For sure. Yeah. I hope I haven't forgotten to feed you.
It's all right. I make do. So yeah, everyone, you can look down in the show notes for links to the podcast for the Unlockables and also the YouTube channel. And you can see what's been going on in the few months since we recorded this that Eric doesn't even know that he's doing yet. It's a magical prospect to look forward to.
If I'm done with Kingdom Hearts, I might just be on a hiatus because my brain will probably hurt. I don't know. We'll see.
That's right. Yeah. You're just laying outside in the grass, staring directly into the sun.
Absorbing much needed vitamin D.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. So again, check out the Unlockables. It's worth your time. And for this podcast, the same things that are helpful to support, as always, you can leave a rating and review if you enjoy this show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Podcast Addict. That helps people find the show. So if people are searching for podcasts about Gris, they might find this one, and that's what we want. So that's really helpful. You can also join the Discord server to join in the discussion about Gris, about other games on this podcast. Tell us what you're playing. Talk to us about your pets, especially show us pictures of your pets. Talk to us about what you're cooking, things like that. We have a wonderful community in there. You can listen to my other show. It's called A Top 3 Podcast. It is a comedy show. We do top 3 lists. We draft weird topics. And last but not least, if you want to support the show monetarily, you can do that at patreon.com/realdavejackson. For $2 a month, you can vote in what games I do on the show. And as the tiers go up, so do the treats increase. So, with all that being said, we are going to take a music break. When we come back, it is full spoiler time for Gris. All right, we're back, and it is full spoiler time for Gris, and we are not going to be shy about like late game spoilers or late game revelations right at the beginning of this section. So again, reiterate, if you don't want to be spoiled for Gris, please leave, go play the game, come back in 3 hours. We'll be here waiting for you. We'll keep the seat warm. So Gris is a journey, and we avoided saying the exact words, through the stages of grief, or the commonly accepted stages of grief, especially in our cultural perspective here. So in Gris, you do go through the order of the stages: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Those are the names of the achievements, which is why I recommended turning the achievements off, because I don't know, I would have liked to have done more puzzling out. What is this color representing, instead of having something pop up that says acceptance?
Accept the truth.
Oh my God, not again, not again. So the first stage begins with Gris singing in that statue until, again, she chokes. She loses her voice, and she does not regain her voice until a key point later on in the story. So first and foremost, do you think that there is a symbolic meaning for the voice, or use for the voice?
I think so. Everything in this game has symbolic meaning because it all works together. Great to talk about these 5 stages of grief and the way you move through them. I kind of took it to feel like her voice was kind of her happiness, because when she was singing, the game felt a lot more lighthearted. Everything kind of felt, more colorful, the things that you experience. And then when she chokes up and loses her voice and then kind of starts to like fall down, that's when I kind of immediately kind of started in the back of my head. It's like, oh, I think I kind of understand what this game is starting to tell me. So I think her voice is her happiness. It's her way of expressing herself. And when we talk about the stages of grief, we'll see, like, when you go through that grief, you do kind of feel like you lose that happiness. You lose that sense of self as you experience something that is very traumatic.
The sense of self is what I thought too, in those exact words. So I'm glad you brought those up. Whether it's happiness or like a feeling of being in control of your life or something like that. Like, I do think that the voice is representative of her sense of feeling like herself. Whereas many of the stages, or many things that happen within the stages in the game, that is gone. And then when you get that back, the game's not over yet. The story and the journey is not finished. There's a portion of the game where you do have the voice. It's a gameplay mechanic. And the symbolic value of regaining that, I think, is really important. So we'll hit that when we get to that particular section. But since they do make it a point to make the voice such a big part of the journey you go on, losing it and then regaining it, and then something else that happens later, I do think obvious symbolic importance for that. So before we get into the breakdown of the stages that you go through, I want to revisit that kind of conversation here about the linearity, but those small touches and things they do along the way here. So we said already, this is a linear progression through grief, then anger, then bargaining, then depression, then acceptance, and then the end of the game. So had it just been that, I think it would have rang hollow if you wanted people to resonate emotionally with this journey through grief, because as you said during the non-spoiler part, and I think as is somewhat common knowledge, that 5-stage structure is a helpful way of visualizing it, but it's not like you go through those. This is my denial period. And then when I move into the anger stage, I am no longer in denial, 0% denial over here. And then when I move into bargaining, 0% anger. That's not how these things work. This is really messy. And the thing that I think saved this and then ended up elevating it above what I thought it could be is that in all of these stages, there are so many bumps in the road. There's so many times when you think you're making progress, but you literally in the game fall back down. There is use of color to denote that this thing from several stages ago is still here. And then maybe that color dominates a scene. The way that it shows this really rocky and uneven journey, this messy, interwoven journey of progression, I guess I'll say, I think is really, really excellent here.
I agree with you 100%, and I'm really glad we did touch on that closer to the top of the episode, because, I think this is useful for, like you said, to kind of describing, and because humans, we don't do well with abstract concepts when we're upset, because that doesn't help us make sense of the world, and we just have a natural inclination to make sense of the world. So
Yeah.
the stages of grief framework helps us to kind of understand all and process all of the feelings that we're feeling when something makes us experience grief or something traumatic happens to us. But I agree with you. If this would have just been a game where it was like, okay, now you're in the red zone and that's anger, and now you're in the green zone and that's, if it just moved you from like zone to zone, I think it definitely would have been a little too on the head. And even when you do some research about the stages of grief, a lot of the articles are like, this is common knowledge that people know about this, but a lot of people in like the scientific and psychological communities don't preach this as fact, because humans are more complex than that. And like you said, the thing that really does represent that in this game is how some of the colors from the previous stages you've already visited are kind of present in the color of the stage where you currently are. And like you said, you're constantly trying to go through these different stages and fight your way back up, because you do fall down into deep chasms a lot. But a lot of the times when you think you've fought your way back up, you fall back down. And that's very much how it works as a person that's gone through trauma and dealt with grief for a vast majority of my 20s when I struggled in my life. You have some days where maybe you're in denial, and then maybe you're bargaining, and then maybe you feel depressed, and then some days maybe you do accept it. But even though you've accepted it, doesn't mean that later days you can't slide back into some of those other stages. So it's not like a canal or like a locking system where it's like, I've escaped from denial, now I just be angry, that type of thing. And you're 100% right. Like, if that was the structure this game took, I think it would have been a big miss, but it blends the different shades of this journey together so well that it makes it a home run.
Yeah. If you just looked at like a very surface level view, like maybe if you, let's say, just played through the game and were not paying close attention to those details, or if you skimmed through a let's play, or maybe if you just played the game and just kind of focus on like the gameplay side of things and didn't pay a lot of attention to the environment, it might seem like it is more simplistic of a journey than it actually is. Mm-hmm. But that's why I'm glad I did that second playthrough. I'm glad you watched a second playthrough to pick up on those things, because you might go through it and be like, oh yes, we're in the red zone. This means anger. That's neat. But then you notice like this thing happens in this specific portion of the red zone. And that is something that is not just anger. There is other storytelling going on here. In later stages, if you're not paying attention to the colors, you might not notice. Well, you might notice the presence of red later, but you might not be like, wait, why is red still here? I thought we were past the anger stage. But of course, that's not how it works. Like, the simplistic 5-step journey through grief, it's helpful for people to like understand a journey they're going on, because like we have a need to understand everything about it. And psychology is like a subject where that need to understand clashes really harshly with how fucking complex the human brain is. So I think that, and we'll talk about some of those specific details as we run through like the stages that the game goes through. But I think that the attention to detail and the commitment to, yes, this is a linear progression through the denial zone and then the anger zone. I'm doing air quotes right now. But within those, there's so many things that show you that there's emotional intelligence behind the design of this game, the gameplay, the colors, the storytelling, all of it. So I wanted to kind of bring that back and kind of set that up before we dive into each individual section.
Yeah.
The other thing is, as you're playing through the game, you are collecting these stars, and at certain points you go up to a place. The stars will help you like build bridges or unlock new abilities. It is the kind of puzzle aspect. You do a little mini puzzle, you get a star. And then at certain points, you take them back, the stars leave you, and they go up into the sky. And I was always wondering throughout the game, like, what is the constellation going to be? What are we building here? And it turns out that what you're building is a bridge that will lead you back up to the place that you fell down from, which I thought was a cool realization. And there's a great payoff for that later on.
Yeah, I always kind of took the stars too to kind of be symbolic in the way that when you're going through this journey, it can feel very kind of dark, and there's not any way out of it, and there's nothing that ends the suffering soon. That will end the suffering anytime soon. But along the way, you find these little motes of light. You find little things to hang on to, right? Whether it's like your friends or your family and seeing or hanging out with them, or good things that happen in your life, or just kind of things that you experience along the way. You collect those and carry them with you, and eventually those kind of moments also help in the healing process. And I found that very symbolic when you ultimately do like make that constellation bridge going up. I was like, oh, it makes sense. That's kind of just how I interpreted it.
Yep. Agreed. So let's get into these stages that you go through. So the first section is the denial section, and that is that colorless part at the very beginning of the game. Thankfully, they don't give you an achievement pop up right this like literally 20 seconds into the game. You're down here, then it would be like denial, and you're like, oh, okay. But they don't. Luckily, they hold back on that one. And I think that the way that they represent denial in this part is really excellent. Once you realize that this is that immediate raw emotion right after the thing that happens that is the causing the grief in this case.
Yeah, it's when she first falls down and she kind of stumbles to get up, and you're not really sure what to do. You kind of press some buttons here or there. Something to note here too, that there is a button that when you unlock that ability later on that allows you to sing. If you press that button, she will kind of like withdraw and like almost like kind of clasp at her throat a little bit.
Yeah.
As kind of like symbolic of, she's lost her sense of self. But yeah, when you fall into this white void, this is really kind of there's no really other way to describe. This is a beautiful way to describe that. The first moments after this traumatic thing happens to you, if it's someone you've lost or something else, you really can't process it, right? Your mind kind of denies it as a defense mechanism and just kind of shuts everything else out. And it feels like you're kind of like just in a void or a fuzz, or you really can't focus on anything else. And as you start to like progress through the white void, things kind of intermittently, intersparsely start to show up. And that's kind of like you progressing through that stage and being and starting to become aware of like the things around you slowly but surely again, as you can start to kind of process what it is you just felt.
Yeah, like that feeling you get, and it doesn't necessarily have to be like a loss, but that feeling you get when you get really bad news, whatever that could mean to you. That right. Feeling when the walls close in around you. The camera in this section is the most zoomed in it could possibly be on her, just kind of reflecting how in that moment, nothing exists outside of like your immediate surroundings, basically. Nothing might exist outside of your own head in some of those cases. It makes me think of like just anyone who's going through this, but also responsible for the well-being of other people during that moment, and just like how fucking difficult that must be to be in that situation. Because I think this is a good representation here, how like, again, the camera is zoomed way in, the all-consuming thought of what is going on. This can't have happened, stuff like that. The fact that you can walk slowly during this section, but if you press a button, she'll fall down, like just unable to really do anything. And then another little touch, since we know that this is a loss that happened, now we know that after you finish the game, the statue, which you find out eventually is a statue representing her mother, and that's who she lost, is her mother. It's in a secret ending. It is canon. So that statue's buried under the sand. So kind of that feeling that this person is gone, buried. Maybe literally buried, gone forever, basically. And I think that is, again, the 10th time we're going to say it, and we're going to say it 10 more times. Gameplay, visuals, music, and then this environmental design. Visuals in the sense that it's this black and white void. all working together here to show the emotional state of Gris.
Yeah.
So this is good stuff. And then eventually you get through that opening section. You are able to run, you're able to jump. So you're still within this, phase, but able to go through the motions, go through daily life or something like that. So this is a great opening scene for this.
Agreed.
The next one you go into is the red stage. So as you progress, you go through the levels, you collect the stars, and then Gris always comes back to the statue, always goes into the hand of the statue, and then there is an emotional outpouring, and in that outpouring comes a new color into the world. So from this white and black and gray void, I don't think we said it yet, but for anyone who made it this far and doesn't know, Gris is the Spanish word for gray. So that is how we know the pronunciation of the title. Red is introduced into the fold, and they're starting you out with a really easy, color psychology one here at the beginning. Red is anger. So if you're not aware that we're going through the stages of grief here, the second stage is anger. We have a red level.
Yeah, because people, when you're mad, you see red. So, I mean, that's probably the one that's most on the nose for sure.
Yeah. Most on the nose. I like how this one starts with a fall, a long fall. It is a journey-like, kind of like surfing down this hill type thing. Remember the sand surfing part in Journey, similar to that. But then as you go, most of these levels all start with these long descents, and so you are, metaphorically working your way up through these things, and that eventually the goal is to get that constellation bridge built so you can move up and out of this journey, I suppose. I really like what the gameplay thing in this section represents as far as the progression through an angry time. So this level, for those who didn't play, is this really alien red level. It's got these like pyramids and floating rocks, and the biggest thing is it has these really violent sandstorms that come. And if you're caught out in the sandstorm, it will pick you up and blow you backwards and kind of stop your progress through the level. So the early part of the level is timing, jumping, and getting to safe places before the sandstorm comes. But eventually, your first gameplay ability, which is to use her dress to create, you turn into a block, basically. But you steel yourself, you get really heavy. Now the sandstorm can't move you, and you can actually move forward during the sandstorm, which I thought was a nice representation of, kind of hunkering down, hardening up, maybe pushing out emotions, not allowing anything to get close to you during, let's say, turbulent things that are going on.
Yeah, and again, it's a very easy visual to understand. Anger's oftentimes referred to as like a stormy type of emotion, right? I really like this part because, you're using her new ability to basically, like you said, steel yourself against the rage of the storms, your inner self. There's another thing that I kind of noticed too, in that when you have this block ability, if you jump up and then hit it, you're able to smash through the floors of areas where like the floor is broken. Yeah. And you're able to also like break pots and some things that are like destructible in the environment. So that too can kind of be like, I took that as, that's kind of anger lashing out, and yes, maybe you're hardening yourself, but maybe your anger is also destructive to like the environment around you, type of thing as well, because it's really one of the only abilities that allows you to kind of destroy the environment that you get in the entire game. So it makes sense that type of thing would be found in a stage that's symbolized by anger.
Yeah, 100%. Like there's environmental anger with the sandstorms. And if you're in an angry state, like think about if you just had a really bad day and you are pissed off, you kind of feel like the world is out to get you too. Like everyone's, gunning after you. Everyone's trying to, mess with you. It's not probably the case, but someone driving like cuts you off or whatever. And you're like, why would you do that to me? Like stuff like that. Right. The world's out to get you. So like, that's those sandstorms, but you're exactly right. Like this ability is a violent ability. You're smashing stuff. And this can be seen as maybe Gris is lashing out at people around her. There's a part in this level where you have to smash like a hermit crab type thing's shell, and then it runs away from you and goes and quickly finds another shell, and it does not want to be anywhere near you. So maybe a little symbolism that people around you might be afraid to some degree. They don't want to be around her during this time. There's also a part where you smash down through the floor, and there's the mirror part where it's like the dark world and the light world below.
Oh, yeah. Visually stunning, this part.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Definitely a screenshot part in the game. The only way to progress there is to repeatedly smash the ground. Kind of, I don't know, a tantrum of sorts. And that's what releases what ends up being like the primary antagonist in the game, is that outburst. So these are all... these are not all things that I found out on my own. This is the benefit of a replay and then watching a couple of videos talking about the psychology behind it. Shout out to Daryl Talks Games for a really good video about the psychology of Gris.
I think I saw that same one too. It's a very good video.
Yeah, I mean, Daryl always talks well about games. It's a good channel. So, yeah. The anger section here, I think, is well constructed with the environmental detail, with the color, of course, but then also with your actions during the section.
Mm-hmm.
One of your first clues in this section, too, will kind of clue you in maybe on what's going on in the story, because you don't have a lot of context at this point. But that part where you smash the floor and go down into that, black and white, light world, dark world area, is a temple of sorts, and it's full of these statues of crying women. Not just crying, I mean like wrecked in grief and sorrow. And down in that basement area where you let all of those the birds or whatever they are, where you smash the ground and they're released, it's full of these statues. So that got me thinking that this is either representative of her, but it could be the person she lost. And I went back and forth for most of the game wondering if it was a girlfriend or a friend or a mother, which it did turn out to be.
But just because it turned out to be that doesn't mean your interpretation would have been wrong, even if you wanted to decide it was a friend or a girlfriend or whatever.
No, I
mean,
yeah.
Because that's the beautiful thing about this game is it's open-ended enough. Like, yes, canonically it is her mother that she loses, but the lessons can still be applied to, even if it's not something that you lost someone. Like, grief can be attributed to many, many different things. Like, oh, you maybe broke up with someone a year, things like that. It's open-ended enough that you can still kind of connect with it personally and apply it to your own life if you've gone through something similar.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that it is her mother doesn't really change anything about the journey that's going on. It could be any kind of loss. So that's a good point by you, that it doesn't really have to be somebody dying even. It can be a different kind of loss that would send you through this kind of emotional journey. Those statues could represent some version of herself, some, grown-up version of herself, because those statues don't look exactly like her, but some version of herself that is lost. Like we said, we do find out in that secret ending that it is her mother, but that doesn't really change any way that you would perceive the journey she's going on. So after this, green is introduced into the world, and this one is an interesting one for me because it's bargaining is the next step on the journey. That's the achievement that you unlock, says bargaining. But green is a color that could have a lot of different uses. And I personally chose to read this in a couple of different ways. Like, there is a bargaining process, if you want to talk about that. But this is also the happiest section of the game until maybe the end. This is actually a pretty chipper section. The music is nice and curious, and it's this nice forest level. There's all these things living in the forest. This is the first part in the game where it's not just all bad times. Yeah,
I would agree. And I think green is an interesting choice here because normally green is more oftenly associated with like better times and happier things. Like you literally have a notice that says it symbolizes life.
Yeah.
And
good. Yeah.
I think that green being the choice here, you know, I the way I look at the bargaining stage is that like it's not like you're like bargaining like you're making a deal with the devil. Like if I do this, X person will return. It's not necessarily that cut and dry. Bargaining is really like the first place where you try to like understand what happened and try to like justify it or try to make it make sense in the framework of whatever your world currently is. Because as we go through this, like and we know that based on the 5 stages, after bargaining is depression. So bargaining maybe is green because you feel a little bit better here and you're starting to try and understand your grief and make sense of it. And you're able to function and go through life and start to kind of like enjoy some things until you kind of maybe slip back into that blue, which is depression, which we'll talk about coming up. So that's kind of how I interpreted it. And as you say in your notes here too, like red is still very present in this stage as well. So it's not just like a fade to green.
Yeah.
It almost kind of like gradients its way into the green stage as well. Like it's still there and like accent colors and kind of in the background and stuff. So again, symbolizing that you're not just done with anger. You don't close that gate and like move on to the next one. As you start to bargain and make sense of what happened, you still have shades of that resentment and that anger in there as well. And you still might even have shades of that denial. I'm sure there's some white in there as you play through too, that, you know, all these kind of things like mix together as you process this.
Yeah. Since the game is giving such importance to those 5 main colors, you know, white, black, I don't know, maybe not 5, but white, black, red, green, blue, and then eventually yellow is the last one that gets introduced into the game. Those colors will continue to mean something. So if you ever just stop and look and kind of be like, okay, what colors are here? That's representative of the emotional state of what's going on. And this green level is where I really, really appreciate those touches to let you know that this is not a clean, linear journey. Like you said, you finished anger and you close the gate and anger is contained in the old room and now you're in the bargaining room. It's not like that. So red in this forest level, all the trees are red. So it's here. And maybe if you want to use the symbolism of trees taking root, like those roots of anger are deep and hard to get rid of. Also through this stage, again, this is another long descent to begin this stage. So you make progress in the last stage, you introduce the new color into the world, but you're immediately down, 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 down. And this is a game where that means something when you descend. Later on in this, the red takes over again. So you go through this nice forest section, and there's a thing I want to talk about with the forest section in a second. But after the forest section, you get introduced to the main antagonist of the game, which is those birds that you released earlier, kind of coalesce into this giant bird thing. And if you notice during this, quote, boss fight, all the other colors go away and it's pure angry red all over again. So well realized again to show you that, no, this is not a linear journey, even though this game is packaged within a linear progression. The character is not going through a completely neat linear progress here.
Yeah, and I really like that symbolism too. Like I really think green is when it hit me that this is kind of what the game was doing, because, you know, it had the touches of red as we progressed into the green section. And then as we kind of have this, I guess it's like an escape sequence with, this giant ink blob bird shaped monster. It's really trying to like chase us and devour us and prevent us from going through and finishing that journey. Again, we're not just sequestered from the anger section here. Like, that creature is a very real representation of sometimes you just wake up and your mind drags you back into that place where you were before of your anger. That's kind of how I felt and I interpreted it.
Yeah, 100%. There's 2 things about this boss fight I want to mention real quick. Gris's cape that she wears, or her dress, when you do the double jump and the glide, it looks like the bird's wings. So
Yeah.
later on, this creature actually does turn into a representation of herself. So there is an aspect of this journey where you must, reckon with yourself and your own feelings, I suppose, in order to complete the journey here. The other thing is that the way this boss fight works is the bird is blowing you like this sandstorms were earlier. So you have to platform, make progress through these levels without getting blown backwards. Eventually, though, you're not trying to avoid getting blown backwards. You're using the bird to propel you forward, which I thought was meaningful that they reversed that. As if, this is a sign of progress that's being made within this really bad time.
Right. And as long as it's not wrong to experience that feeling of anger, right? And it's not wrong to try and bargain and make sense of it, and some days will be better, some days will be worse, but eventually you will make that progress forward. And it just, the symbolism is just so beautiful. Oh,
it is. Yeah.
Love it.
Now there's another part about this like green bargaining level here, a personal interpretation that I took outside of like the symbolism of the stages of grief and progress and falls and things like that. To me, this really felt like Gris had a good day during this green section, because the green section it's this wonderful forest. The music is upbeat. There's a part where you make friends with a little box dude out in the forest. You ground pound on some trees to have little apples fall, and he eats them. And then you go back, you meet his family. They give you a star so you can progress. It's a really pleasant experience, and it kind of reminds me of if you're in this, shitstorm of a life situation, you can still have good days along the way. And so I just kind of imagine this as like maybe Gris went out for a walk in the forest, went with a friend, or saw an animal out in the forest, a nice little encounter or something like that. The fact that even though the thing right before this was super negative, the bright red anger level, and then what comes after this is also pretty negative, that boss fight with the bird, this to me symbolized or represented that you can have good days in between.
And that's where I kind of, when I was playing the game, drew my comparison of like the stars you get for the constellation being like those little moments in the midst of all this. Like you said, you get the star when you hang out with this box dude and meet his family, and they give you that star, and it adds to the constellation, which eventually builds your way up and out. So that's kind of where I was like, oh, okay, like, yeah, this was a good day that she had. And when you have those good experiences amidst this kind of just general awfulness you're dealing with, that does help in the healing process to, like you said, go on a hike or go out with your friends or do something with somebody that's important to you or something that you love. It's important to still try to do those things, even if you're still struggling, and you will still struggle, and that's okay.
Yeah. And that's represented here too. The fact that even in the middle of this very pleasant experience that you're having in the forest with the little block dude, the red is still very present. The anger is there. It's always there in the background.
He's eating the red apple, so it's almost like he's eating the anger.
That's right. In a way, maybe someone brought their dog on the hike, and who doesn't love hanging out with a dog? So in a way, like those, like the loss, everything that you went through before this is still very present in this scene, but it's a very positive scene. Again, you can have this good experience even when everything else in your life is upside down. And then when the bird, the monster shows up, all of that drains away. It's right back to red. So it kind of got me thinking about like, if you are going through one of those times in your life, and I've gone through enough of them myself to know, you can distract yourself, or like you can go do stuff with friends and they can distract you. But the second you're back home and you're back alone with your thoughts, all that can just come rushing back.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
That's what this felt like to me, when you get that moment of quiet, when your brain is, back to like the new normal for this period of time. all of that comes rushing back for her here. So yeah, good level here. There's a lot of detail. This was, again, one I'm glad that I played it twice, because there's a lot of these details that I wouldn't have picked up on, especially that kind of working theory about having a nice day in the midst of all this, sorrow.
Right.
So after this green level is over, the next level introduces blue into the mix. This is the depression section. And kind of along what I was talking about earlier, it felt really natural for me for when you go out, you have that nice day, and then you come home and your mind is back to the pit, basically. As the nice stuff washes away, it can wash away even further behind and leave you in this state of depression, which is what comes next here for Gris. And another touch, again, in case you are not fully on board with the stage, the feeling that's happening here, this is an underground level, and it involves a lot of underwater sections too. Both things that you might associate with a feeling of depression, feeling like you're underwater.
And it's also rains here too, in case it wasn't
right
on the nose enough for you. Yeah. But yeah, no, I agree, because you will have those good days in the midst of everything. And in a way, counterintuitively, that almost makes things worse, because you may have had that good day and just had a blast out with your friends or doing whatever. But yeah, as soon as you're out of that moment and all that stuff comes rushing back, it almost makes it feel like it's worse than it was, because it was gone for a couple of hours. You got a chance to get away from it for a little while. And yeah, I mean, again, I think this level's pretty on the noses too, but this is to anybody that's gone through depression or anything like that. I mean, I've gone through my fair share of it as well. Back in my 20s, it does feel like a deep, dark abyss. It feels like you're underground. It feels like you're being crushed. It feels like, there's a lot of water in the stage. It feels like almost like a drowning sensation. It really, really does, which is a weird way to just kind of be able to describe how it feels. So this level is, I think this one probably hit me the most, just because I just was able to relate to it so much without getting to like personal stuff. I was like, yeah, this is exactly how I felt at certain stages when essentially this is like feeling like you're at rock bottom, and this is really, you're in an underground cavern. You go down really, 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 really far, and it feels like this is the absolute bottom pits of despair that you cannot get out of.
Yeah, I mean, there's a section of this where you're in like the actual abyss, like where there's no light, you can't see where you're going, stuff like that. So again, it's very forward with what it's representing here, but this is a part where, kind of like the anger stage, I suppose, but this is a part where even if you did not have like a really terrible loss that left a huge impact on you, I mean, who hasn't gone through bouts of depression and parts where you feel like you're underwater, or like you said, being crushed in all directions. So being on the nose is not necessarily a bad thing. And they want to represent, again, in many different ways, how the character's feeling here. There is a part in this where you have to go down in the deep, dark abyss, and you can't go through this alone. You have to have the help of a friendly sea turtle that comes and first provides a light so you can see where you're going. And I think, representative of the value of others during a time like this. And it's not to say that being around other people or inviting other people into your space is the one cure for depression, but the value of having other people, or maybe it's not a person, the value of a pet or something else to provide love and support to you is shown here with the sea turtle, I think, as it literally guides you through the darkness.
Yeah, and that's, again, very representative of... In Western culture, we tend to feel like we need to kind of stuff all these things down, right? And that even if we're depressed, we kind of need to stuff it down, internalize it, and, man up and deal with it. We just need to kind of grit our teeth and kind of plow through, kind of how we were in the anger section. But that's not the healthiest way to deal when you're feeling emotions like this. And like you said, somebody doesn't always have to be around you. That like you don't have to like cling on to somebody. But I think it shows emotional maturity when you do accept that help, whether it's like talking to somebody or, like you said, just snuggling with your pet, or like the ultimate form of help, like if you decide to go and get therapy. Right. I think something we've done a really good job as a society is we've really come around on therapy not being like this taboo thing, like, oh, so-and-so is going to therapy, they must be really, really messed up. I've been to therapy, and it's incredibly helpful for literally anything you're dealing with. So seeking out that help, representative of the turtle, to kind of guide you through those dark waters is not a sign of weakness. It's not a bad thing. It's one of the most positive things you can do to try and heal yourself. I also like too that the ability you get in this section is to literally swim through the water. So yeah, it's the ability to navigate this darkness, to navigate these kind of twisting and winding tunnels, which really kind of feels like what it's like to navigate depression. It's this twisting, winding, trying to get out of this funk, this bad feeling, this sadness that you're in. And I just found that, again, another really great ability to complement. Again, it's another great example of how all the things in this game work together to just hammer home this message. The ability, the turtle, the darkness that you're swimming around in, and the way it's blue, all this stuff. It's so cool.
Yeah. Speaking of gameplay, like the section before this in the forest level, the ability you get is a double jump, a glide, and then the ability to use those little red butterflies to do like a super jump.
Yeah.
The abilities that you get with that, and then in the cavern, the underground level, the ability to swim, literally the ability to navigate this place, the abilities are about empowerment. And empowerment is something we expect in video games. We expect our character to get stronger, to gain new abilities. That is a given thing ever since like Super Mario Brothers. We expect that. But it does have an extra meaning in this game because you do need little things to empower you to get through these events that you're going through here. There's an interesting read that I heard about the turtle and how it is this friendly force in the story here. But I did not notice this. Came from that video we talked about earlier. But the turtle is red. So if you are, again, ascribing an emotion to a color and thinking that those are consistent throughout the whole game, which they should be, that turtle being red should be representative that anger is here and that anger is being used to get through situations in a way, which I thought was quite interesting.
That is interesting. And yes, I would say that anger in itself is not inherently bad because it's a human emotion, right? Sometimes the results of anger can be bad, but
yeah,
I would say, yeah, it can also be a tool. And the concept of, I didn't really think about that. I watched the same video and I didn't really think about that too much until we started talking about it just now. But the concept of using one of the other stages and emotions to get through another stage is very, very interesting. And just, again, another example of the way that blends all the themes together, blends all the colors together. So it's not just, and this is why we said in the non-spoiler section, if this just would have been of like a red to green to blue to yellow type of journey, this wouldn't have been as impactful because you wouldn't have moments like this.
Right. Exactly. And I'm glad that you mentioned that anger is portrayed in that negative light and is certainly used in a negative way earlier in the game. But anger itself is a normal emotion that, humans and other sentient beings feel. It is a normal thing to happen. So it does make sense that Gris would possibly benefit from the presence of anger during this. I am not quite sure, if you want to map this onto like a specific thing that would happen in her life. I'm not sure how you would map that on, but it does make sense. It does make sense that anger could be helpful along the way. There is nothing violent, particularly about what happens in the presence of anger in this scene, if that's the way you want to read this, with the turtle. Later on, the monster comes back, the bird comes back. This time it's an eel because you're underwater. And number one, it comes at a time when you have just made great progress through the level. You are about to go and, do the thing with the stars, keep working on that bridge up to, the better place. And then the eel comes back and it chases you way, way back down into the cavern. It's like a literal maze and you're just swimming away from this eel. It's another chase sequence. So there's that like Ori and the Blind Forest inspiration here, I feel like. And then right at the moment when the eel is about to snap down on Gris, the turtle comes back, bursts the eel apart, and guides you to safety again. So you could have that, again, representing anger being the thing that helps you through this particularly terrible episode, and then you come out of it with a slightly different mindset on the other side, or a different feeling. It could also be just the benefit of accepting help, whatever form that might take. A lot of ways to look at it. And this is not a game that seems interested in telling you that you're wrong about the way you feel about a certain thing or what it represents. So yeah, it's just a really endlessly interesting game.
Yeah, and it's really indicative of, again, how you can make incredible progress in battling depression and going through this stage of working through your grief, only for you just come and basically, because we've kind of already established that this kind of dark ink monster is a representation of Gris's inner darkness, she's kind of like her own worst enemy, right? Which is how a lot of us are when we're dealing with stuff like this. Our self-sabotage is often our own worst enemy, which can, we use other things to try and get through and get help and stuff like that. But I think it's, again, we made all this progress in the blue, in the depression, and in swimming through these labyrinths and finding the turtle, helping us get semblance of escaping the depths of depression, and we sabotage ourselves only to dive back down there. And this doesn't happen. This could be, you could be at a point in your life where like 2-3 years go by and you're perfectly fine and stuff like that. And then suddenly this comes along and drags you back down. It can be something that happens over a very long period of time when you least expect.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this kind of grief or sorrow or loss or whatever you are going through, whatever this game is representing, is not something that is going to be over by the time that, the quote, the progression through the stages of grief is over. It doesn't mean that you never think about it again or never have any bad times afterwards. It can always come back. And especially if you are the type of person that suffers from chronic depression or just, episodes that come up, it comes back, and it doesn't necessarily have to be something bad that triggers it. You can just come back.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, represented here in this game, that a lot of times when you think you're making great progress, that's when you fall even farther down and have to work your way back up.
Mm-hmm.
The next level after this is when Yellow is introduced into the world, and this is the level where Gris gets her voice back, and it's the last gameplay mechanic you get where you can use the voice to breathe life back into the flowers and plants and things in the environment. And these will release those butterflies that you use for the super jumps. So it's used for the puzzling, the platforming, but also, as we kind of talked about at the beginning of the spoiler section, representative of Gris kind of finding herself again and being able to truly navigate this space. with the gameplay reinforcement, because now you have every ability that you're ever going to get in this game for this acceptance level.
Yeah, I really think that I was trying to think about, I had a couple different points I wanted to make, but yeah, the moment she got her voice back was incredibly powerful, and is indicative of accepting what happened and almost kind of making it a part of yourself in a way, because it's not something that goes away. I mean, it's an experience that you went through, and it's something that, sometimes you'll still even think about it from time to time. You almost carry it kind of like a scar on yourself, but you manage to find your sense of self again and find the beauty in life and meaning and all these types of things, and accept that it happened and you can live with it. And that usually does make you interact with the world in a positive way again, whether that's the way you're treating or interacting with people or your work or your hobbies. You're finding joy and fulfillment in these things again, whereas before maybe you couldn't, or maybe you weren't, or you stopped pursuing certain things because you just didn't feel happy doing them, or you just felt like you couldn't. And then Gris gets her voice back, which is literally the first thing we see her doing in the entire game is singing. So it's a really beautiful full circle moment.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that this is her interacting with the world in a positive way. That at this point in the journey that she's on, she is able to interact with the world in a positive way more consistently. And so the way that it is gamified in here is by using the voice to grow the flowers, and you're making the world around you a better place when you're doing this. So,
and it's really not. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
It's okay.
It's really symbolic. I just thought of it and I got really excited. It's really symbolic too, with the way as you move through the stages. Red is the first stage you move through, and that ability we get is very kind of restricts your movement. It's also very destructive. And then as we go through green and blue, the two abilities you get are traversal, something to help you navigate through those stages. And then yellow being the stage where you get your voice back. This is the ability that allows you to interact with the world in a positive way and grow things and change things. So I just realized that now that progression of abilities from something that's very hard and destructive to something that's very positive and a good force in the world is also kind of very cool.
Yeah, there's, that old adage that you have to first, work on yourself or be at peace with yourself before you can positively impact the world around you.
Right.
And that's a pretty simplistic way of looking at it, and I'm not sure that I totally agree with it, but I think that is represented here in this game, where everything that you're doing gameplay-wise, ability-wise, is empowering the character, Gris. And then the final ability is the thing that makes the world around her better. Only when she is fully empowered herself, then she can affect the world around her in a positive way. So It's a good observation there by you. This level itself, I thought, was pretty interesting, because you might be fully empowered as a character, or as a character in a video game. She might be more empowered as a person within herself, but the level is one that kind of shows me that despite all of this, it's still not a super smooth journey, because this is the level where you're constantly going across this little threshold in the middle of the level that causes you to fall up to the ceiling, and the game is upside down now. And part of the puzzling in this is you're constantly moving between the right side up world and the upside down world, showing to me that, no matter what progress she's making, things are not perfect still. They're not normal. You're still going through the ups and downs of the journey here, which is well observed to me, that even late in the game, characters at the most empowered that they are as an avatar in here, you still have these swings. And then at the very end of the level, there's a very pronounced, the world rights itself in slow motion, and then you're on your way to the final stage.
Yeah, it's a very beautiful way of kind of showing you that acceptance isn't the end, but it's really the point at which you can kind of start to make sense of the world again. And that's kind of the way I took it, where she's kind of jumping up between reverse gravity, upside down and right side up. And kind of that's literally her with her full set of abilities, with her full sense of self intact, starting to relearn how to make sense of this new world where things are different, right? You're different. Maybe somebody in your life is gone or something happened. Is traumatic, and you've come out the other end of that experience, or you're at the end of that experience. You've grown as a person. You're not the same person that you used to be, so you have to kind of make sense of the world again with your new worldview or in the way that you've grown.
Yeah, and this is the part in the game when you have completed that bridge made of stars.
Yeah.
And in, what I think is another great observation and story point in this game, Gris goes out. She starts to get ready to climb up that bridge of stars, and you think that you're done. You have made it. But suddenly that monster returns, and instead of a bird or an eel, this time it is herself. It's a giant version of herself, and it sucks all the color out of the world back to black and white, and it sends her tumbling all the way back down again. And not just to the bottom where the game first started, it's down into this black ocean. And you have to swim up out of this black ocean, and what you come out at is a tomb for a dead woman. Again, it's unclear right now who the woman is, but this is your final thing where it's like, yes, she lost somebody. This is what this is. But I love the fact that when you thought that you beat the game because you collected all the stars, and when Gris is ready to make that final movement, it's all gone. You're tumbling back down again. Who knows what caused it? It could be a funeral, maybe. I don't know. But it could be going to visit the grave or something like that. But again, once you think that you're victorious, not so fast.
Yeah, it could even be as simple as, you've made it out the other side and you've lived your life and you feel happy and stuff now, but just one little thing can remind you of whatever it was. And it really, I know people throw the term triggered around in a lot of different ways, but it really can trigger you and literally drag you back down all the way to the bottom to where you started. So it symbolizes, it really does take a lot of time and work and effort to get to a point where you're better and you've healed and you accept the new way that the world is. But even at that point, even when you think that the end is in sight, it may not be. You may still have to deal with lingering depression, or you may go all the way back down and just have to go through it all over again. It's very possible. And it is very symbolic that the shadow ink monster takes the form of Gris. Because like I said a couple parts earlier, it's really symbolic of, at the end of the day, we can be our own worst enemies at the end of the day. I mean, our inability to kind of let go or accept or challenge those things on our own.
Yep. And I like how this game does not make you, quote, kill the darkness inside of you in order to make progress through this. The way that she makes progress through it is first, she uses what she can to make the world better around her. So she is better equipped to deal with these setbacks at this point in the game. She can walk right away. She can swim. You go up to the grave. She can sing, and all the flowers bloom around the tomb down there. And then she sings, climbs up the broken pieces of this statue. She sings, and the pieces start to form back together into a complete statue. But while this is happening, the inky black water is rising, and you can see it kind of rising up. Then it's at the level of her face. Then it's covering her face, and only her mouth and eyes are showing, and she's singing. And it swallows her up. Again, completely submerged by the water here as that final statue piece locks into place. All the while she was singing, and then what breaks this apart and banishes the darkness is the statue also starts to sing. And this is a really poignant and powerful moment, because you can immediately tell that, number one, singing is a connection that she had with her mother.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that it's not this JRPG type, like, you're going to kill the demon inside of you or something like that.
Time to kill God.
Exactly. The way that you make progress through this is that the person that she lost is there and probably always has been there, but she hasn't been in a position to realize this. And this is a thing that another game that I talked about on the show recently, which will go nameless right now. I don't want to spoil one of the big things about that game, but you can look back at the episode list and figure it out if you don't already know. But this idea that the person that you lost is with you and is helping you along the way. The fact that this person she lost is not gone out of sight, out of mind forever, just with you in a different way. That's the thing that helps her progress to ultimately the end of the game.
Again, the symbolism just strikes me to where is the point that the darkness almost completely overwhelms her while she's singing. And, the lesson I took away from that, or the symbolism I took away from that was, she's going through this again, and that darkness is welling back up inside to pull her back down. But, throughout this whole journey that we've been on with her and that she's been on, look at all the abilities and stuff that she's gained, and just the way that the gameplay tells you, she is better equipped to handle it now. And again, that's kind of a mirror of real life, is when you go through things, you are better equipped to kind of process more similar feelings like that. And you are better equipped to, when those relapses do happen, and if you do fall back down into those pits, you're better able to get out of them again, if you've overcome that hill once before. And you're right, it's a very beautiful symbolism that even though that person, if it is death, if they are physically gone, or if it's a breakup, if they've left your life, or however they've left your life, or whatever's happened, they are still there with you in the things that you did with them and the lessons they taught you and the things that you were influenced by. If it is your parents, it's the lessons we took from them and the memories and the moments we shared with them, that sort of thing. And it's just, again, it's such a beautiful message.
I also wanted to shout out a small little part of this scene. After the darkness is banished, the statue is whole again. Gris is singing, the statue is singing back. Gris kind of jumps over once she realizes what's going on, and she kisses the statue on the cheek. It's a big statue. It's much bigger than her. But that was just such a sweet little animation there. You can immediately feel the love and happiness on Gris's part, of this maybe realization that she's having that in a way this person is still here. Really wonderful. So the statue then lifts Gris back up to the point where that star bridge begins. And this is the ending and kind of rolls into the credits and ending song of the game. But she walks up the star bridge. As she's walking up, she's singing and harmonizing with the statue, with her mother. And she ascends up into the clouds, and that's the end of the game. And the credits roll, continuing that harmony that they sing together. And it's not a super happy song. It's still a pretty sad song during the credits. But the idea, the most powerful part of it, is that they are together in a way. Whatever kind of meaning you're taking from the game, it's very clear at the end that whoever she lost, whatever manner that they were lost, they're together. And I think that if the game taught you anything, it's that she did not conquer grief. She's still going to have bad times along the way, the journey continues, but now she has this person back in a way.
Yeah, I would agree. It's something that it doesn't. It's not really a destination. It is a continuing journey, and time does heal most wounds and kind of will help blunt those feelings. But it's something that'll always be there with you, and it may be there with you for a long time. Again, I'm a person that wears my heart on my sleeve, so a vast majorities of my 20s, I was kind of going through similar stuff in the way that this game communicated a lot of the emotions, and it really connected with me. And it's just now that I've gotten into my 30s and kind of started a new chapter of my life, that I've really been kind of able to look back on those times and kind of really process them without sinking into the depths of complete despair and sadness. So it's a lifelong journey, and sometimes it takes years and years and years for you to get to a point where you can accept the things that happened or accept the loss. And you may never accept it. It may always hurt a little bit, but you learn the tools and the skills, and you become stronger as a person. You're able to kind of handle it better and understand that, life isn't over, and that person may still be with you, or the things you went through did make you a better person in the long run. So yeah, that was like my personal connection when the credits rolled, and that's just what I sat down and I thought about immediately as that song was kind of playing, and it really connected with me personally in a way that I honestly didn't expect it to.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the kind of takeaway, along with that person always being with you in a way, is that at the end of the journey here, Gris is able to, she still has the bad times for sure, but she is also able to have those positive memories and associations again with that person. And it shows in the secret ending when it shows a flashback of her and her mom looking at the stars together, which explains the significance of collecting stars to make the constellation in the game here. And I think about some people that I've lost, whether it be grandparents or some friends that died tragically too early. And when I think about them today, it's still sad. Like, you get those pangs of sadness that person is gone, and you wish that they weren't. But along with that, you do have the positive memories that come back. And early on in the journey in this game, Gris was probably not able to have those positive memories at the time. It's negative emotions for the most part. So this kind of rings true to me, when I think about the people that I lost, when I think about how I think about them when the memories come back up, it really works.
Yeah, I would agree with you 100%. Just thinking about people that have left my life and now being able to think about them in a more positive light, and the memories that we shared together, and the experience you have with them really does leave a mark on you. And I know it's kind of like cheesy, like human connections, like, oh, there goes Eric and like his Kingdom Hearts, like hearts are connected bullshit. But it really is true. And they become the people leave an impact on you. And in a way, even though they're physically gone, they never are really gone.
Yeah.
As long as you have the memories and the happy thoughts of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Friends are your power.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. And I think that, like, again, I said in the beginning that I didn't fully resonate with this. I think that it would have been a game that, like, completely crushed me if I had lost a parent, which I thankfully have not.
Mm-hmm.
Or like somebody of that level of like closeness to me. I was a little kid when my grandparents died. So that's a long time ago. If I were to play this game when those things were more raw or more recent, or like I said, someone who is that close to me, this game I think would have absolutely crushed me. As it is, I can still connect with things that happened in my life and people that I've lost. But yeah, I just think that this game has the potential for almost limitless potential for connection with a certain person and their personal history.
Yeah, and it's a rare game because most games won't kind of tackle this subject to this degree in this fashion. Yeah. It's not something that is comfortable to talk about. It's not something that we enjoy talking about. So the fact that they made this kind of experience and and captured it the way they did in such an incredible manner with all the symbolism and just the complete package that it is something that is really amazing and something that should be celebrated. Like you said, it's similar to the way that I'm sure a lot of people connected with Celeste and the story and the messaging in that game. That's rare in an age where games are more and more made for just mass consumption and entertainment. This was a surprise, something that caught me off guard, and something that, I think almost probably anybody can take away some kind of connection to it, because we have all experienced it differently, but we have gone through similar things as human beings. We have similar experiences, just in different ways, and it'll connect to you differently. But I think everybody has experienced that to a level where you can understand the symbolism behind the story for sure.
Yeah, 100%. It's definitely built in a way where they're telling a specific story here, but it is general enough that you can apply it to your own experience. So this is a really good product, and I actually think that it's something that I appreciate more after having this discussion with you about it, which is it's valuable. It's one of my favorite things about the podcast and the discussions that we can have when I come out of a discussion with a greater appreciation for a game than I went into the discussion with. And I already liked the game. I already thought it was really good and valuable and, a worthy piece of art. That to come out of a discussion 2 hours later with an even greater appreciation for it, I think that there's great value in that too. So thank you for coming on and being a part of this.
Thank you, Dave, for having me. This was a really, really great one. And I'll honestly be excited the day this one comes out, because I think I'm the same way as you. I appreciate this game more than I did before I talked to you. And I'm really excited to kind of see the conversations it may spur in the Discord server, because I think just talking with everybody else about this game too, I think that, maybe our appreciation will grow even more, and maybe some people will be inspired to pick it up and try it. Maybe it wasn't on their radar, knowing that it's a relatively short experience they can check off pretty quickly.
Yeah, I hope so. And if this is a game where you just listen through the spoiler section, even though you didn't play it and you know what it's about, I think that there is still value there for you to go back and play it yourself and pick up on symbolism, and you will probably connect with different things about it, because that's the nature of games like this. Games that are like connecting with personal experiences and feelings, they're going to hit everybody in different ways, and different things will hit different people in different ways. So I think that there is value in going back and playing this. And I'm preparing myself to get wrecked by the story of Neva whenever that comes out. So
yeah, I will be ready for I'll be ready for the studio to hurt me again for
That's
sure.
Right. Yep. So again, this has been a really valuable, productive conversation. I'm really happy that you were a part of this. So thank you again for coming on.
Dave, it's always a pleasure to be on a show of this magnitude. It's always the honor is always mine.
Cool. Well, thank you, man. And thank you to everybody who has listened all the way to the end. We appreciate you as always. One more plug and shout out for you to go down in the show notes, check out everything that Eric is doing on the Unlockables. It is worth your time, especially if you love Kingdom Hearts. But even if you don't, even if you're not a Kingdom Hearts person, go check out the other content, because it's not all Kingdom Hearts. Eric likes to pretend that he's pigeonholed himself, but he's got other stuff going on over there.
I know who I am in the community, Dave. I know I've typecast myself, so
that's
okay.
True. You do have a reputation, but I'm just saying there is other stuff. It's not all Keyblades and darkness and I don't know, other stuff that's going on in Kingdom Hearts. So big appreciation for Eric here for this discussion. Thank you everybody for listening. And as always, tune in next week for the next game to come out of the backlog.